Hello, this is Jeremiah Craig coming at you for another episode of Ask the Bootmaker. Our guest today on this Ask the Bootmaker episode is an Oklahoma custom cowboy bootmaker and winner of the 2022 Working Cowboy Boot Open Award at Wichita Falls. Please welcome Josh Duvall. Josh, thank you so much for joining us today on this episode of Ask the Bootmaker.
Thanks for having me on. I sure appreciate it.
So I got a lot of questions that we can get into here. I've sort of written out a list, but I want to remind everybody watching and listening live that you can jump into the live chat and also ask your own questions of this custom bootmaker. This is a great opportunity. If you have a question that you've been wondering about regarding cowboy boots or just creativity and makers in general, please be sure to use this opportunity and put that question in the live chat. I want to get things kicked off in probably the best area that I love to get these things started off at is, how did you get started in bootmaking?
How did I get started? I'd always done some sort of leather work. Of course, bootmaking is kind of definitely a very unique sort of leather work. When I was 17, I started working at a Western wear store in the Oklahoma City stockyards. And in the back, there was a guy named Alicio that did boot repair. And I don't know, there was something about just kind of stepping into that shop. You know, you hear the machines and the smells and everything. You get really attracted to it. And so I bugged him for a really long time about, trying to show me stuff. And I think he was kind of standoffish about it. Sort of, this is my thing, like find your own thing, that sort of deal. But I kind of wore him down until he showed me how to, do like heels and stuff like that. And kind of the basics of the equipment. Whenever he quit working there years later, I didn't do repair, but I kind of went back there and started messing with some of the machines and tearing boots down, trying to figure out how they were made. Of course, that didn't really tell me anything about patterning or anything like that. And so started looking around for ways to learn how to make boots. And I found D.W. Fromer, unfortunately, who just recently passed. He has a book out on how to make boots. So I bought that, read it, made a couple pair. They were all right. Shortly after that, Lisa Sorrell came out with a set of DVDs on how to make boots. So her being right up the road from me, that was kind of a no-brainer. I got that, started watching that, and I was able to kind of ask a few questions where I had, some points that stumped me. But then from there, it was kind of a lot of trial and error, just making boots and seeing what works.
Wow. I love the fact that Lisa Sorrell has had such an impact on like this next generation of bootmakers through her YouTube channel and through the DVDs that she's released. Now, when you say that you had a couple of questions when going through the DVDs and making the first couple of pairs, did you reach out to Lisa Sorrell to get those questions answered? And was she responsive with that?
Yeah. Usually it would either be through like email or a phone call or something. Obviously I'd try to weasel my way into her shop as often as possible to ask a question or buy some supplies. But yeah, she was really responsive and really helpful with any questions I had that I felt like were things that I didn't get from the videos, or things that I was trying to do that maybe wasn't covered under really the basics of making a pair of boots.
How long ago was this? Because it sounds like you haven't really had a mentor like other bootmakers have sort of gotten into it in a very similar way through the DVDs and then mentored or apprenticed under another cowboy bootmaker. But it sounds like you didn't do that.
No, I don't know why. I'm bad about asking for help, probably. Looking back though, I really wish I would have. I think if anybody's trying to get into it, that's definitely the way to go if you can. Looking back, that's one thing that I hate now is I don't really feel like I can claim any sort of lineage. And so I think sometimes the further out there you get, if you feel lost, you don't really have a good base to fall back on if you do have that lineage. So I do wish I would have would have done that. But no, it's just been a lot of trial and error and talking to a lot of different bootmakers and trying to be really conscious of how, there's a lot of things that you can't intermix as far as the styles of bootmaking, specifically fitting a last and patterning. A lot of those things really go together. And so you kind of really have to be conscious of what you're doing there.
No doubt. And it's really impressive that you're able to create award-winning boots without having a mentor or somebody that you could have apprenticed under. Looking back on it, like you said, you are kind of regretful of not having a mentor or apprenticed under somebody. If you were to do that now, say you had a time machine, go back in time, who would you want to mentor with?
Oh gosh, I don't know if I could answer that question now, because that's another good part. I feel like I've been very fortunate to be able to talk to so many great bootmakers. And that's not to say I learned something from every bootmaker. I've learned something from every customer that I talk to, and most of them have never made a pair of boots. Yeah, I've learned so much from so many different bootmakers. Yeah, I don't know who I would have picked. That's a tough one.
It's a tough question. And then you don't want to isolate any of your friends that you've made in the industry. I understand. I was just curious.
It's not even that I don't want to isolate them. I really don't know that I could narrow it down, because there's so many different things that I love about everybody's boots, that everything kind of, and I think it's that way for every bootmaker eventually. Everything becomes like, I like this person's heel or this person's toes or the way this person, does their shanks. And so you eventually kind of get this weird amalgamation of things of your own that just work sometimes, hopefully.
Fair enough. I think that's great. And we've had a couple of questions come through on the live chat already. And I feel like this is a cool place to ask a couple of them. One of them comes from Smackdadius. And I like this question on the heels of that last one, because maybe you didn't have the mentor, you didn't apprentice under anybody. So he asks, what pushes you a pair of boots to that next level of quality for you?
OCD, I guess. I mean, that's the only thing I can think of. I think when you're making a pair of boots, you see every single little stitch. And so any of them that happen to come up crooked or don't lay just the way you thought they were going to, I'm real bad about freaking out about that stuff. And so I don't know, I think that stuff bothers me enough, probably to an unhealthy level, that I might try to overcompensate a little bit. That's probably all it really is.
I feel like a lot of creatives are obsessive, like I said, OCD, with the perfection of it, like getting it just right. And it's really difficult to get things just right when you're trying to be creative and trying to make something. So a lot of times for me, anyways, like if I'm working on a piece of content or if I'm making a song or something, sometimes it's like, that's it. Like, it's just good enough. And that's the way that I got to live with it sometimes. But bootmaking is different, right? Because you have to make it, the fit has to be perfect, right? For the customer, the stitching has to be absolutely perfect, right? For the price that you're asking for it. So do you see anything like, are there any moments, and I don't want to give away your say that's good enough, as in you're cheating and saying that's it, I have to live with this now, but are there those kinds of moments where you're like, I wish it could just be a little bit better and I'll have to wait till the next pair to make it that way?
Yeah, definitely. And I'm not gonna lie, and I'm sure my customers will hate hearing this, but if I had to make a boot that I was satisfied with for my customers, they'd never get a pair of boots. And that's not to say that I feel like I'm putting out an inferior product. I just, I don't feel like I can ever be satisfied with it. I think there's always going to be that, you have a vision in your head of what something's going to be, and the way it comes out, whatever that difference is always probably going to be a little bit bothersome.
And I think that's a good quality to have, is we hold ourselves to the highest standard at all times. So it's it says something about your work and you as a person to hold yourself that highly, and the standards for the boots that you create. And it's not saying that, like you said, that your boots aren't good, because you won awards for them. You last year at the Wichita Falls Boot and Saddle Makers Roundup, you won the Working Cowboy Boot Open category, which is the highest category that you could get for the Working Cowboy Boot, because it's open to everybody. And you won them with a beautiful pair of elephant boots. And my question regarding that is, how did you decide to enter those boots into the Working Cowboy Boot category and not one of the other categories like artistry or top stitching? Because it looked really good in both of those arenas. Like, I think like you could have been competitive in either of those as well.
Well, originally that boot was actually a trade with another bootmaker. And so we were both doing elephant for each other. And I just kind of figured elephant fits into the work boot category. Plus it ended up having like a collar on it and stuff, which I don't know if you can do that on the top stitching.
Oh, okay.
That's actually what I was looking at on this year's pair. I was thinking, well, maybe I could put them in something else, but I think they've got something else that disqualifies them from that. But yeah, so I just figured with the elephant, they were kind of a work boot.
No doubt. That makes sense. And very functional too. I mean, they have to be functional being a working cowboy boot, but it also looked good at the same time. So obviously cowboy boots have a function and fashion side to them. Do you enjoy the artistry or the functionality side of making a cowboy boot more, or maybe equally in their own right?
Equally in their own right. I'm probably weird about not liking the word artist. I don't know. But I do like that side of things a lot, the design work, patterning and all that. But again, if it doesn't fit, if it doesn't wear right, nobody's going to see them sitting in a closet, unfortunately. So, I mean, yeah, they definitely got to fit right. They've got to walk right with the person's foot. If they need, to put them in a stirrup, they need to be able to hold up, put a pair of spurs on them. They've got to have a good heel counter. Yeah, so really, I mean, fit and function is first, but flair is definitely very close after.
Yeah, no doubt. And I'm curious now, what about the word artist or artistry don't you like?
No, it's not so much that I don't like that word. That I feel like I've seen a lot of people that have unfortunately got stuck into that sort of, like, being a creative. It can be, I feel like people can get themselves stuck into bad situations financially, where maybe, yeah, I don't know. I think it's easy to get yourself stuck into some tricky financial situations based on who your customers can be. And I think it's easy to maybe get a couple eclectic customers that, I feel really bad saying this, but that can, they will pay for you to live and take all of your production. And I think that can really, really have an effect on a person's like psyche, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So you're saying that being an artist and being commissioned by a few people is worse than working with several different types of people, because of the different kinds of people that you get to interact with and the different kinds of boots that you can make. And if you work with more people, and maybe focus less on the artistry, if that's the right way to say it, then you're able to work with more people and make a whole bunch of different kinds of boots.
I would say it's more so that I would like to make the artistry accessible to more people.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
That's fair.
Instead of it being limited to just a couple people eating up all the production.
And you've heard of that happening with lots of other bootmakers where they only have a couple of customers that keep
not bootmakers, but other artists.
Oh, okay. In different industries.
Other mediums, yeah.
Gotcha. Interesting. How do you find inspiration for these designs that you, especially with the elephant boots that you did last year?
I mean, I would say literally my inspiration comes from everywhere. But probably probably movies and music a lot, honestly, is where I get a lot of inspiration. I don't know, seeing stuff like that. Sometimes I'll pick something out that interests me, and I might see a shape from something else to think, oh, I wonder how that might look on a boot top or something like that.
That's cool. So how does that translate from music? If you're watching a movie or something, you see shapes, you see scenery, colors that you want to integrate into the next cowboy boot design. But when you're listening to music, how does that inspire a pair of boots for you?
I don't know. I feel like music kind of gives you a sense of like you feel movement with it, or like you almost feel shapes with it, sort of, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
Um, I mean, I don't feel like you can listen to like Dwight Yoakam music and not feel a certain way, or
that's
I mean,
fair.
things kind of just, I feel like they lean a certain way depending on what you're listening to.
So do you listen to one album or one type of music at a time when you're making a pair of boots, and then switch it up on another pair of boots, like depending on what you're feeling?
Yeah, I'm bad about, definitely I'll listen to different like genres or bands depending on what kind of boots I'm working on or what I'm feeling at the time. Yeah.
Oh, that's really cool. It must influence the design and the vibe of the boots completely different from one to the next.
Yep. Definitely.
That's great. I got
Feel like
another
I keep
question.
things a little fresh.
Oh,
Yep.
sorry about that.
No, you're good. I just said I think it keeps things a little fresh.
Without a doubt. I love it. It must be fun shop to have the music blasting like that on each and every pair of boots.
Yep.
I got another question in here in the live chat from Robert. And this is something that I mention in my videos a lot, is the difference between like traditionally made boots and modern made boots. Something like the difference between an old Justin boot from the golden age of boot making to now a modern boot, which maybe is more like a made in China Ariat or something like that. So he asks, what do you make? Do you make traditionally made or modern styles?
More traditionally made stuff. Everything's pegged. There's no brass tacks or anything like that. I think a lot of that stuff is mainly just, a lot of it's for speed, just to kind of get production up. And I'm definitely not fast. No, there's something about, driving pegs into a boot or hand stitching. Well, there's things that I like about it that, yeah, they could be sped up with some other production methods, but I don't know. I'm doing it because I enjoy it.
And it's proven. It's been
Yeah,
it's been the way that it's been done forever, and it's repairable. So I mean, why wouldn't you want to do it that way?
exactly. Yeah, don't get me wrong. I'm definitely not going to knock any sort of production style boot. Everybody's got to start somewhere. Not, I'm definitely not the person to come to for your first pair of boots. So, off the shelf boots definitely have their place. There's something for everybody out there. I kind of view it more as a ladder than I do just like, oh, well, they shouldn't make boots that way. There's something for everybody.
Oh yeah, 100%. That's a great perspective to have. We got another question in here from Mike K, who asks, how do you balance your signature style and creativity with what the customer wants in a pair of boots?
Yeah, that's tough because definitely, I don't always see eye to eye with every customer. So we always try to find some sort of balance. I try to go back and forth. They give me an idea. If they have some drawings, that's great. If not, I'll try to take what they have and draw up a few ideas, and then eventually let them pick the final thing. So, because I want to make sure they're happy. But yeah, there's times where I draw a few things up and we don't ever come to an agreement. And it might just be one of those deals. I might not be the bootmaker for them, and that's fine. I understand that. Everybody's got their own style that they like. That's why there's so many bootmakers.
Fair enough. And you do have some very unique stylistic choices that I haven't seen anybody else do. Like one of the things that I noticed on those working cowboy boots last year, and I asked you the question about it, but I also want to ask you now because it's super interesting. Your finishing touches is the staining treatment that you do to the outsoles, and that's sort of the shaving cream staining method. Could you explain that process, how you do it, and how you came up with the idea of doing it in the first place?
Yeah. So usually I used to just always use just a regular Phoebing's bottom stain, which I think is what most people use on the forepart of their boot. And then we had a bootmaker that kind of turned supplier that was supplying us with some really great leathers and some dyes. He had another lady that was doing some awesome dye work. I think on Instagram, it's like elemental leather or something like that. And so I was messing with the dyes, kind of messing with some of those techniques on stuff like wallets. I still do a little bit of other leather work and stuff like that. I thought, well, that would look kind of cool on a sole. And honestly, I'm horrible with that bottom stain as far as getting it even, and I can get it streaky as heck anyway. So I thought I'd try that, and it really worked out great. There's still definitely some things that I'm learning about it, but it's been awesome, and I don't have to worry about trying to make sure that dye is even. And I mean, it wears off the same as a regular dye eventually, but it's fun for when you first pick them up.
Yeah, it is really fun to see. It's like, oh, that's an interesting finish on that sole. And that was going to be my next question, is that, it wears away pretty much in the first wear, right?
Yeah.
Because it is leather at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So is it like a time? Does it take a lot of time to do it?
Not any more so than trying to get the other part, the regular bottom stain even. Maybe a little more setup and cleanup time, but nah, as far as the overall time, it's about the same.
It seems like one of your signatures on a pair of boots. Do you have any other signatures that somebody could be like, oh, those are a pair of Duvall cowboy boots right there?
Probably maybe the little curve that I have in the top of my tongue pattern might be one. Honestly, I can't think of much other than that. That's something I'm probably still definitely working on. I'd like to really have my boots stand out as like when you see it, it's like, oh, okay, that's one of Josh's boots, but not quite there yet, I don't think. Not for me anyway.
Yeah, I definitely think you should add something in that's a little bit more long lasting than the shaving cream.
Full finish, exactly, yeah.
Or just the design on them, because it does look cool, and it's like really eye catching when you see it first, but then you're like, well, is it going to last? And do I want to wear them to mess that up? Because it looks pretty cool.
I've got a cool idea to do some tops like that, but I haven't done it yet. We'll see how it turns out.
Oh, I would love to see that. I can't wait to see something like that. That would be really interesting.
Yep.
All right. Let's keep going here. And since we're talking about soles, I got a technical question here, because it seems like custom boots don't have as much of a problem with the sole separating from the welt as factory boots do. And that's something that I have a problem up here in the Northeast. You get boots wet, leather outsoles a few times. Maybe you don't let them dry out completely before you wear them again the next day. And eventually that sole just separates from the welts really, really easy. So I'm wondering if that's something with the glues, and what is the difference between the glues that a custom bootmaker like you uses and the glue that factories use?
I don't know. I saw that a lot whenever I worked at that Western wear store. I don't know if it's the glue that they're using, or if it's just maybe they're not letting it tack up enough before they stick it. I don't know. Or maybe I don't know. No, I use Masters, and I actually thin mine down a little bit, and I end up doing 2 coats for my soles. It makes them a pain to pull off whenever I go to resole them. But yeah, because that's one thing that drives me nuts. And I know a lot of people say that, oh, well, the stitching's not holding. Well, that stitching is eventually going to get worn through anyway. So there really needs to be some glue to hold that. So yeah, I don't know. I personally think they just maybe don't let it tack up enough before they stick their soles. Maybe just trying to get them out faster. I don't know. But yeah, I know what you're talking about. That drives me nuts too.
And one of the criticisms of using a stronger glue is exactly the problem that you just said, is that the repair folks have an issue trying to take those soles off to then put a new pair of soles on. And they say that using stronger glues will therefore damage the welt. Is that the proper way of thinking about that? Or is it, because I mean, those kinds of boots still get repaired all the time, even though they may be a pain in the ass to do so.
Yeah. Yeah, there's times where I felt like I was going to pull some things apart, pull them apart. But honestly, if you take that boot and you soak your sole in some thinner and let it soak through and kind of loosen up that glue sometimes, it'll make it a lot easier to pull off. I can understand repair guys not wanting to waste a whole lot of thinner. It's not exactly cheap to do that on every single pair, especially with as many as they're doing. But that's what I end up doing to help that a little bit.
All right, that makes sense. Thank you for the technical answer there. These are things that I'm always really curious about, including this next question here, because we're talking about the stitching and you're saying the stitching isn't, you get criticism or people say that some boots, the stitching will wear through, so there needs to be glue. What about double stitch welts? Is there any advantage or disadvantage to a double stitch welt? Is it really that much stronger? I
personally think it's just decorative. I don't care for it. I don't personally do it. I don't offer it. I don't know. I don't care for it.
Fair enough. I've heard things that from other custom boot makers. I don't know if you're in the same camp or have had any experience with this, that it can also increase the amount of perforations that are in the welt and thereby make it even less strong, just because there's more places for dirt and water to get in instead of just a single stitch welt. Do you have any thoughts on that?
That does make sense. I kind of feel that way about toe bugs. I mean, I do offer a toe bug and wrinkle on the top, but I kind of feel like that's another spot for, especially in Oklahoma, we've got some, out east, we can get some really fine sand and stuff. And man, that stuff will work its way into a boot and it's abrasive. It starts wearing things out. So yeah, that kind of makes sense to me, Another thing too, I know you'll take a pair of double stitch to get them repaired, and you can look at them when you get done and maybe the inside row jump to the outside or the outside jump to the inside. And you're like, oh man, no, I don't care for it, but that does kind of make sense to me where it's just another way for dirt to get in and eat away at things.
Yeah. And also it's more expensive to repair at a lot of repair.
Yeah. They're going to charge you an extra $10 for that row.
Yeah. And that's on the cheap end. Some even go even more than that. They'll do $30 just because they don't want to do it.
That, or they'll leave one row in, the actual stitching on the top, and they'll just put one row back in whenever they resole it. Just so don't have to worry about it.
Love it. Oh, let me keep going with these outsole questions here. And then I'll jump right back into the live chat because we have had several more questions come through as we're talking. My last outsole question is that a lot of folks talk about a 10 iron or 11 iron outsoles or different sorts of weight to them. Can you speak about what that means and how many different levels of leather outsoles there are?
I think two most common would be like 11 to 12 iron and 9 to 10 iron. 11 to 12 would be good for a work boot. If somebody's strictly just gonna have a dress boot where they're not gonna be wearing it that hard, not gonna be wearing it all the time, they want something that's a little more comfortable, you could do a 9 to 10 iron, just a little thinner, gonna be a little more comfortable, easier to break in, not quite as bulky. Having said that, that's an interesting question because I think I'm actually fixing to change soles, so I may start using some different stuff and might start using a little bit lighter weight stuff on everything. Just depends, trying to find the best products I can all times.
So the 9 to 10 are a little bit lighter. And does that mean that they will wear out sooner?
Yes, because they're a little bit thinner.
And then the 10 to 11 ones, or the 11 to 12 ones, they're thicker. And I've tried to break in some of those, and it definitely takes much, much longer to break in.
They can be a little stiff.
Yeah. So
especially if you pair it with a good thick insole. I mean, yeah, they can be pretty stout.
So do you use the same weight or iron for the insole too? Or do you usually go heavy on the outside and then lighter, like a 9 to 10 on the inside?
Kind of the same thing. Just depends on what the boot's going to be worn for. A lot of times too, maybe the sizes, if it's a smaller size, I'll just go with a lighter weight just because, man, you put that heavy stuff on a size 7, like now it's really tough to break in. So yeah, it depends on what the boot's going to be used for and the size and the customer.
Interesting. Great. Thank you for explaining that for us.
Good.
It's something that isn't really covered a lot online, and I've had some questions about it. So it's always great to ask the experts to get the information. So let's jump right back into the live chat here. Got a question from Mike K. A couple of questions, and one is very similar to my next question. So I'll just have it come from him instead. When I get to it. But his first question is, do you ever make boots for yourself?
Yeah, I need to. I've got a pair that I need to resole and put heels on right now, but yeah, it's hard to get to your own stuff. I don't make any money on those. I can't afford them.
Now, does that mainly come in to play because you have to know how your boots wear and break in so that you can speak intelligently about them to customers?
Yes, and anytime you're thinking about changing, like, or trying something new, it's probably best to try it out and wear it on yourself first. You want to know what you're putting your customers through. So yeah, I mean, I do make some for myself, but probably not as many as I should.
Oh, so you have a few. How many have you made yourself?
Haven't made any in a while for myself, probably over a couple of years, which I know you talk to most bootmakers. A lot of the old timers are like, well, I haven't made a pair for myself in 20 years. But no, there's some new things I want to try out. So I kind of need to find some time to test a few things out.
What are the boots that you made yourself that you wear most often? The leather?
Probably a pair of full quills.
Nice.
Which I don't mind working with full quill. It can have a tendency, sometimes it wants to twist on you a little bit, but man, whenever you get them done, they're so comfortable.
I've heard the same from a lot of bootmakers. It just can be a pain in the ass to work with, but at the end of the day, they say that it's so worth it.
Yeah, and what's bad is the first probably 4 or 5 pair that I made, I didn't have any issue with. They went on the last perfectly great, and so I was dumb enough to say, I've never had any issues with it. And then every pair since then has been a
you jinxed yourself.
Yeah, I did bad. So
I love it. The universe said, no, you're not getting away with this.
Exactly. I was just getting lucky.
So what toe shape do those boots have, or do you sort of mess around with different toe shapes for the boots that you make yourself?
I do mess around a little bit, but they're all box toes, probably just different widths and lengths. Favorite is probably just like a 1-inch box toe.
Nice.
Kind of classic looking.
Yeah. Is that your favorite shape for toe shape? We got the question here from Smack Daddy about the toe shapes and heel sizes too, or heel shapes. What are your preferences on those?
My favorite would be like a 1-inch box toe with like 1 7/8 inches, really good underslung heel. I just like the profile that boot sets at. Having said that, obviously not every customer's foot is made for that. So that's another thing too. Whenever people come in to get fitted and order a pair of boots, they might come in wanting something totally different than what their foot can really handle. That's another thing too. That's kind of probably where a lot of changes come into design, is just, not everybody can wear a 2-inch heel. Not everybody can wear a pointed toe. So kind of looking at those things and what's going to set best with the profile of the boot.
Yeah, that makes sense. And how do you know what types of heels that people would be able to deal with? I mean, when you're saying 2-inch, 1 7/8 inch heel as your favorite, it does look great, but that can be tough to wear every day, especially like if you're not riding, you're just sort of standing or walking around, right? So how do you know what is the perfect heel for somebody?
Just looking at their foot. I do take a petagraph of their foot. That helps a lot. Talking with the customer, if there are any issues with their arch. Some people that have fallen arches, they want all of that lifted back up. Some people, you try to lift it back up and it just kills them. So just trying to really talk a lot with the customer about the boots that they've worn in the past. I usually try to make sure that everybody brings in their favorite fitting pair of boots, so I can kind of see what it feels like on their foot, what fit they're looking for. When I first started, I was bad about, I would take the measurements and I thought, okay, they're coming to a custom bootmaker, they want to fit just like this. but that's not always the case. Everybody's got an idea of comfort in their head. And so trying to really get that from them to maybe lead them in a direction that's not going to hurt their foot in the long run.
That's a really cool perspective to have, and to encourage your customers to bring in boots that they already like. And kind of goes to the thing that you said earlier, where, you know, you're not the person to get a first pair of cowboy boots from. And
Correct.
Now that makes sense. But do you require them to have a specific kind of boots? Like we were just talking traditionally made to modern made. Would it be okay if somebody came in with a more modern made boot, so you kind of got an idea of what they liked?
Yeah, I don't mind being like your first, handmade pair of cowboy boots. I definitely love being that guy.
Mm-hmm.
But it just gives me an idea of what they're used to. Yeah.
Gotcha. So if somebody was to come into the shop with their favorite pair of Ariats and said, "This is how I like my boots to fit," can I have like a traditionally custom made pair of boots that is similar to this? I know that they're not going to have like the cushiony removable insole or anything like that. But you work with that. You can work with that information.
Yeah. Now don't get me wrong. If somebody comes in and like, I personally think their boots are totally just off fit, I'll try to tell them, say, "Hey, I think this is how something should fit." I've tried to at least have, you can't have every size obviously, but maybe a few different size, like I hate to call them stock boots, but
Samples.
correct. So that if I do have something close, maybe they could try it on so they have an idea of what we're getting into. If somebody's fits way off or something, I'll try to get them a lot closer. But if somebody doesn't want something to fit tight, I'm not going to try to force you to wear something tight and say, deal with it. I've got to fit you.
Yeah.
And it's fitting your head. So
yeah, people like what they like and what they know and what they can feel like they can spend all day in. Do you find that a lot of people come into the shop who have ill-fitting boots? Because I noticed, even just looking around at people wearing boots out in public, I can just tell like those boots are way too big for you, man.
see a lot of wrinkles out there, don't you?
Yeah, they're so wrinkly at the arch. Like, it's like, how do you not know that those don't fit you?
No, it's weird. There's a lot of people that don't though. But if you think about it, I mean, most of us grew up, if we wore tennis shoes, our parents were like, "They're so expensive, buy them a couple sizes big so they can grow into them." I think that had a lot to do with it. It is interesting too to see the difference between my older customers and younger customers. There's definitely a difference in their feet. All my older customers their arches are still in pretty good shape. Maybe not the front forepart of their foot. Maybe their toes might be pretty squished up. My younger customers all tend to have a little bit flatter feet. Toes are spread out a lot more. So that's kind of interesting. I definitely have to approach those two different fits quite a bit differently.
Interesting. Do you notice, like, if as you're fitting people on average, does it come out to be like an average D width as you're sort of looking at people, or is there more on the narrow side, like the A width or a B width, or even on the wider side, double E to triple E?
Most of mine, of course, my lasts are, they're older lasts, so the sizing all seems a little bit weird anyway. But I would say I spend most of my time probably fitting people into A's and B widths, and then building out the front part of the boot wider to maybe what like a D would normally be or something. But most people have a narrower heel than they do the forepart of their foot.
Yeah, interesting. That's really interesting information. That's fun to know. Let's get back into live chat here with some of your questions. We got another question here from Mike that is kind of similar to what my next question was on the list that I prepared. He asks, is there a dream boot that you want to make?
There's a bunch of them.
What's the one that you dream about the most then?
I've got an idea for a boot. I've got a lot of work to do before I can attempt those, though. They've got some boot making and like other types of leather work and some engraving and stuff. I want to do some silversmithing stuff that I want to do. So something pretty elaborate, but it'll probably be a few years in the future.
That sounds really nice. So it's not the kinds of leathers that you want to make, but like the tooling and silversmithing and adding that into boots.
Yes. Yeah. A particular style of boot and some things that I've never seen done before, or things done in a certain way that I want to try with some of that. Yeah. It's hard to explain. I've got the idea in my head. I haven't got it put down into actual materials yet.
Well, you don't want to give it away either. So I
Yeah,
mean,
exactly. I
that's
want somebody
enough.
else to do it first. I'm slow enough as is.
I love it. I can't wait to see. Make sure everybody, where can people follow you, just to jump right into this so that we can see this sort of progression and stuff?
I'm really bad about the social media stuff and all that. I do have an Instagram. It's Duvall Cowboy Boots. I do have a website coming up. It's not ready yet, but it'll be duvallcowboyboots.com. Yeah, those would probably be the two easiest ways to reach out. I'm trying to do a lot better with Instagram on getting photos posted and everything. I'm horrible with that stuff. I get stuck in the shop and put my head down and don't look up.
Hey, I don't blame you. That's a great way to do it. You're making boots. You're not making content.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, we'll still follow you there on Instagram and keep track of all of the new stuff that you do on your way to your dream pair of boots. Jumping back in the live chat here, we got another question from Robert. And I feel like this is a question that kind of has to do with relasting. Do you make true to size up half a size to get the correct fit? Like some companies say they size up or size down. Like, could I bring a pair of boots to you and be like, can you relast this either to a last that you measured out or to a standard size?
I don't do anything like that. I know there are some companies that do. Yeah, pretty much with the way that I fit and build my lasts, I really need to make my patterns to those. Yeah, I just don't typically offer anything like that. Now, having said that, if say a customer had bought a pair of my boots and something happened, they broke their foot or they gained a lot of weight or lost weight or something, and they needed it changed a little bit, I can definitely make adjustments then whenever we go back to do repairs for boots that I've made. But yeah, stuff like that. Usually the patterns are so different that it won't quite work with what I'm doing.
Yep, that makes sense. Because it does come down to math at every part of the boot pattern, right? So if you were to make a change in the foot, then the tops might be a little bit weird.
Yep, exactly.
Makes sense. Let's get into this year's Wichita Falls Boot and Saddle Makers Roundup. It's just next week. So unfortunately, I won't be able to go this year, but can you give us a sneak peek at the boots that you might be entering into the boot contest, whether they're done or not? Can you sort of tell us about them if you will be attending?
Yeah, I'm definitely going to be attending. I hope to get a pair done. It'll kind of just be what I'm working on at the moment. I think I might have a pair of pigskins to enter in the work boot competition. I know we were talking about that earlier. I probably need to look kind of at the guidelines again and make sure there's not anything on them that disqualifies them from that category. But yeah, I'll probably take a pair down there to try to put in something. Yeah, more than likely probably those pigskins, just a work boot.
Awesome. And putting it back into the working cowboy boot open category.
Yep. Yeah. I always say every year after the show that, like, okay, well, I need to figure out something for next year and go ahead and get started on it. So I'm not pushing things to the last minute. And I'm here again, like, well, what am I working on?
That's how it always works out, no matter what. I mean, you got to get to the customers first, right?
Exactly.
That's awesome. Are you ever worried about what other people are bringing, like is in terms of competition, or are you just like, it doesn't matter, I'm just happy to put a pair of boots on the table and have fun?
I just like having fun and seeing what everybody brings. The bigger the show, the better. That's the main reason for trying to make sure I get a pair, is just to make sure we can get as many boots on the table as possible. But no, I love seeing everybody's boots, kind of, I hate to say this, but kind of stealing ideas in my own way. You see stuff, you get inspired. It's hard not to take stuff home. So
Yeah, especially without having a mentor too. Like, where else are you supposed to get these ideas if you don't have, like you were saying before, a heritage of patterns to take and things like that? So
exactly.
I'm sure you add in your own twists to these ideas as well.
Yeah, I mean, whatever that is, I'm sure it's just something that I've seen in the past or heard in the past that's just coming back up. So nothing's really original from me. It's from somewhere probably.
Yep, I hear you. Let's jump back into the live chat here. We got a question from Jason Gutierrez. In your opinion, now, if you don't want to answer this is okay, because you might be like sending business to somebody else, a factory pair of boots. But if you do, he asks, what mass production boots are the best quality in your opinion?
It's a good question. I've been out of that side of things for so long, that'd be tough to answer. When I would have said Rios and Mercedes. I would probably have to stay there for now. Just when you're looking at overall things as far as the fit and construction of the boot, I'd probably have to stick with Rios.
Nice.
I think there's definitely some companies out there, other companies that make nice boots as well. I'm just not as certain on the fit of them.
Fair enough. And Rios is a huge name, been in the industry forever. So what a great brand to mention. That's really cool.
Yep.
Let's get into talking about how someone goes about purchasing a pair of boots from you, because that was my last question that I have here. And it's also a question that just came up in the live chat. Does a customer have to make multiple person visits to order a pair of custom boots from you to get measured? And what happens if somebody is far away?
I do need to fit my customers in person. If you're anywhere close, would like to come here, I can definitely do that. That's not an issue. Every so often I do travel, and so I'll try to put that out there sometimes if somebody wants to get fitted and they happen to be in an area that I'm going to be in. But no, if somebody wanted to reach out to me, they can get through on Instagram. They can get my contact info that way. Yeah, it is kind of an in-person deal. Unfortunately, I do have to measure everybody's feet. And if it's the first pair of boots that they've ordered, I actually do prefer that first time they try them on, that I'm there in person so I can at least see how they fit and everything. Under special circumstances, I don't mind shipping a pair though, especially if it's somebody that's had handmade boots before. I usually don't feel too leery about that. But if it's a person's first pair of handmaids, yeah, I kind of want to be there where they try them on.
What about if somebody orders again from you? Can they just like call you up, you use the last, make the design, and then ship them out?
Yep. Once you've been fitted once, just call me up, tell me what you want, and I'll ship them to you.
What is the process of starting to get a pair of boots from you and purchasing? We're talking about maybe just the fit right now, but can you give us, like, from start to finish, how does somebody actually order boots from you?
So usually somebody will come in and we'll go ahead and get them fitted. And then we go through looking at what they want, kind of the way the boot's going to set, heel, toe, top height, that sort of thing, make sure it fits with what their foot's going to allow. Then we'll go through, start picking out leathers, colors, stitch patterns, all that stuff. I would say overall, it's probably, depending on how sure somebody knows what they want, probably a hour to 2 hour process, maybe up to 3.
What does your turnaround times look like these days?
Right now I am currently booking for like a June, July delivery of next year. So what is that, about 8 months? Mm-hmm. And kind of the way I do it is whenever I get ready to start the person's boots, I will reach out and make sure, nothing's changed or anything like that. Make sure things are still good for them.
Great. Those are all the questions that I have, and I haven't seen any more come through the live chat. So Josh, thank you so much for spending this time with us today. Is there anything that we didn't cover that you kind of wanted to mention? You were hoping, like, I hope Jeremiah and his audience asks this question. Was there anything like that you were thinking about adding to this conversation?
No, not offhand. I think we covered most things. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, everybody follow Josh Duvall on Instagram. It's just Duvall Cowboy Boots.
Yep.
And you got the website coming as well, so we'll keep an eye out for that. Best of luck at Wichita Falls next week. Sorry, I'll miss everybody there, but I'll be watching on Instagram. So please post as much as possible. I would love. I'm really bummed out that I'm not able to make it this year, but hopefully looking forward to making it next year. Some contracts came in a little bit later than what I wanted them to this year. So it looks like I'll be in good form to be there next year, though. So
Awesome. Look forward to
I
it.
hope you guys have a lot of fun.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks for watching, everybody. I hope you have a spectacular rest of the day. Josh, if you want to stick around, please do. Everybody else, thanks again for watching. Kick ass take names, and we'll see you around. Peace, everybody.